Buenas buenas, welcome to Music Marketing TV. I'm Kevin Ochoa, and in this video tutorial, we're going to look at TAL-J-8 from TAL Software. Now, this is the second video in our series on TAL Software. In the first video, we looked at the Uno LX version 2, and then in this video, we're going to look at the J8, and in the following videos, we're going to look at the modular synth and also the 101 emulation. So, for this video, what I want to focus on is the J8, and we got a demo track. It's a big room track because I really like the super saws that we can get out of this J8 synthesizer. As you can see from the get-go, we have 2 VCOs instead of 1. That is on the Uno LX. The Uno LX has 1 DCO, like the piece of hardware it's emulating. But in this one, we have the 2 VCOs. We have the VCF, and we have a secondary envelope. So we can do quite a bit more of a sound design. We can create these really nice lush pads. So let's take a listen to the demo track, and then we're going to look at the plugin itself. So there you go, that's the demo track. As you can tell, it's a more classic big room track with these really big super saws that we're creating out of the unison inside of the TAL-J8. So let's bring up the TAL-J8 itself, and then we're going to run through the different modules to get you acquainted with the synthesizer, and then we're going to look at the presets that I made and some that I picked from the included banks inside of the TAL-J8. So let's take this from left to right. So here we have on the left hand side the volume, the balance, the master tune, the octave range, the arpeggio rate, which for some reasons over here instead of down here. I know it's meant to look more like the classic synthesizer, but let's take a listen to this. Up and down 100 cents. And then we can press Alt and left click to reset those parameters. We have up and down 4 octaves, so we have a total of 8 octave range. And then we have the lower and upper balance. And this is the mix between this upper page and the lower page. Because just like the hardware, there's an up and lower page. We can set this to be in dual mode, split mode, or whole as well. So now the keys would, if we're in whole, all the keys would, control both the upper and the lower panel. If we have dual mode, we have the upper and the lower mode to be triggered, but now these are separate. If we have whole, now these are controlled together. If we have split, you see that below C4, we have a different preset which belongs to the lower octave. So if I were to play with the resonance there, and the cutoff, you see that I'm controlling this one, this lower half, and not this upper half. That's just a saw wave. So those are how you can control the two different panels, the lower and the upper panel. And like I mentioned earlier, there's the lower and upper balance. Now I'm gonna set this to dual, so we're triggering both notes or both parts at the same time. See that? Now I'm gonna change the balance here. See, it's very obvious when we have just the upper or just the lower. See, yeah, pretty obvious. Let's reset this and set this to Alt and left click to reset. There's portamento, so let's, before we get into the portamento, let's set this to whole, and we're gonna set this to upper. So now we have this saw wave, and the next thing I'll do is I'll just turn on the arpeggio so I can click on that. And what I did there was simple. I just set the sustain to be low on the envelope, and then I adjusted the decay and the release on both the envelope 1 and envelope 2. And I adjusted the filter a little bit. So now with the portamento, what I can do is have these notes glide into each other. Of course, I have to turn it on first. See that? There's also upper only. It would want to only portament one of the parts. So that's really, really cool. There's also the auto as well. And you can select time and the amount of voices that we have for the voicing. So if we want more voices. And also let's turn this on. Notice how even the portamento's happening more recurrently. And finally, over here we have control over a few different parameters. We have the amount of pitch modulation you can do with the VCO, or well, from the pitch bend wheel. Let me show you. So yeah, I can control that with the amounts right here. So let's set this to somewhere around 12. That's good enough. See that? Now this is cool because we could also set this to be very, very low and then have this modulated by the LFO. So let's come to the LFO, which is over here. And we're going to boost the rate up really quickly. And we're going to decrease the delay time. You see how we can change the character of the sound by just using the mod wheel and the LFO. So this is really, really cool. When you start getting into these more analog emulation plugins, you think, okay, it's going to be really, really simple to work with. There's just two oscillators. I'm not going to be able to do very much. But you can actually do quite a bit of damage and quite a bit of sound design with these plugins. So the next thing I want to do here is mess around with some of the decay over here, make this longer. And so far we've been using both VCOs practically the same. If we push the sense on the second VCO, we start to get this detuned timbre. Let's play an octave lower. Now they're playing the same pitch, I believe. We can also set the second VCO to be a low frequency oscillator. Hear that? And now we can use this to modulate the VCO1. So let's set the source mix to VCO1. So now we're getting two sources of modulation on just the pitch. So again, we don't have a mod matrix, but we can do multiple types of modulation on just one source, like the VCO1. So this is very powerful. Let's set the waveform to be noise. Now this is a cool thing about the noise. Now instead of having a consistent modulation, now we have this randomness. And this is going to sound more natural and more musical in certain aspects, like when we do this type of detuning, or what I call detuning, because we're essentially chopping up the voice over and over, right? So now we have this pitch movement that's random, and it's randomly affecting the first VCO. So it's creating some detunement without actually going in and using the detune. So it's really cool how you're able to basically offset that same oscillator within itself. So basically this is how you connect this mod wheel section to modulate the pitch over here. We can additionally use it to control the VCF, the filter, and the LFO VCO. So this is quite cool. Again, we can do lots of modulation further than you can think, because think about this. We have this wheel right here, and we can use it on both things at once, and also this wheel over here. So we can, with these two wheels, modulate lots of parameters that are affecting each other. Really, really cool. Now let's bring back the regular oscillator and bring the source mix over here. Bring the pitch wheel down there. There we go. Make sure you move this VCO all the way to 1, because when you have it to off, it doesn't sync properly. So make sure you have it all the way to 1. See it? We gotta have it on 1. So we can still activate some of this cross modulation. Right? And now we can use one of the secondary envelopes that we have, because now we have 2 envelopes instead of 1, like in the TAL, Then we can apply this via, let's say, the second envelope. See it? And now we get almost like this pad type of sound, even though we're playing something that's, not necessarily pad. We could even put this on top. And now we have this bell that's nice and smooth. Let's add some reverb to this. In this case, it's delay. We can also add some chorusing. We can do both. Let's change this to up and down. Pretty smooth. If we go over to the VCF, we have, of course, the filter cutoff frequency. We also have the resonance. But unlike the TAL, LX, we have the slope. So we have control if we want to have 24 dB per octave slope or 12 dB per octave. We also have that classic high-pass filter that's in the original piece of hardware. And we have, of course, the filter envelope modulation. We can set this to be negative as well. And we can select the different envelopes that we want to have modulate the filter. And remember, again, how I said that we don't really have a matrix, but we have all these pre-configured destinations where you can apply modulation. In this case, we have the LFO. We can send it to the VCF. And now we have this kind of like mechanical pad. It's kind of still sci-fi, not sci-fi, but still kind of eerie-ish pad. Let's play lower. But it also has, the aspect of the ARP. If we were to turn off the ARP, we have this pad that's almost being sine chained. We can change the waveform to be a sine wave. So now the modulation is smoother, unlike when we have the saw. That sounds like it's being side chained. There's also square or pulse. And we can set this to be synced as well. So let's sync this to, let's do quarter note. There we go. There we go. So there's quite a bit of modulation that we can do. We saw that we can modulate the VCOs, the VCF as well. And the VCF also has two more additional modulation sources, which are the keyboard follow. So now if I play, let's say, a note that's higher, the filter cutoff follows. It moves up along with the keyboard. There's also the velocity sensitivity, so if you have a keyboard, let's go over here to the piano roll. And let's just play a note. And we'll lower the velocity on that one. Let's play this back. Lower the frequency. Let's bring the cutoff all the way down. And then we're going to do this. Copy paste it a few times. See how the filter is open when there's more velocity, and when there's less velocity, it just closes down. Right, so you can add more expression to the synthesizer, and that's one of the cool things about these analog emulation synths, that we can focus more on the songwriting aspect of this, right? How much velocity, how much energy you want to put into the note. When we're, using these more advanced synthesizers or digital, we often, just make a really, really cool sounding preset, but then we forget about adding intonation, dynamics to a melody. So keep that in mind. All right, so we have the VCA, of course, and we have the velocity sensitivity as well for the VCA. And alpha modulation for the VCA. We speed this up, it's going to be much more obvious. There we go. So this has been an overview of the synth. There's quite a bit of things still. We haven't touched the unison, but we will in a second. There's also the main tuning, the MPE control, and a few different parameters that we didn't cover, but we covered most of it, the very important parts. We're going to cover the unison part and the arpeggio more in a second. But there we go, that's an overall of the synth. So let's now look at the presets that we made with the demo track, and we're going to break them down. And let's start from the top. Let's get rid of this MIDI right here. Let's look at the basses, which is usually where I start. Okay, so right from the get-go, we have this really fat bass. Okay, let's make this a little bit smaller. So we have this respace. Now, a respace comes from two things. We're going to use either chorus or we're going to use unison to create detunement from the two voices, two or more voices. In this case, I think we're using 4 voices of unison, and we have a bit of detune and a bit of spread. So let's, I don't want to redo the whole synthesizer, but we can just clone it and just copy the MIDI over. And we're going to reset this, okay? First of all, let's play back the song. It sounds pretty fat already because it's doing this more analog emulation type of oscillation. If we compare it to a citrus, for example, we don't get that movement unless we program it ourselves, because we're using a highly digital synthesizer. These TAL emulations have the ability to naturally move the oscillator itself and also the VCF, so it's going to be constantly moving and flowing. So we have this going on already for us. Now let's enhance that. Let's use 4 voices. Now remember, we gotta change the sign mode to unison. Which usually moves us to 2 voices of unison, but this one straight up takes us to 3. You see the parameter right here? It takes us to 3 voices. And this is kind of cool because usually it's not beneficial to have 2 voices because then you lose your mono information. So it kind of already takes care of that for us and tells us, hey, let's use 3 voices at least. But in my case, I'm going to use 4. So you can get that Reese effect. The next thing I'll do is I'll use the detune. But of course, I'll be moderate with what I do. I'm also going to increase the spread. So you have movements in the stereo field, which is what I really, really want out of a Reese bass. Now, the next thing we have to do is up to taste. It's going to depend on whether you have instruments at the top of the track or you have instruments in the mid-range. In this case, I do. So I have to cut off some of the high end. And the other thing I'll do is I'll start messing around with the envelope to make this nice and punchy. So I'm going to drag this down. And we don't want it to sound too plucky, so we're going to make sure that the envelope on the filter is just a tiny bit modulated. Cool. And then finally, we're going to add portamento to this. Let's turn this on. Now portamento, let's add 8 voices of portamento. Now you could additionally add chorus if you like. In my case, I wanted to do something that's a bit more gritty, so I did not put that in there. So let's compare it to the one I have in the track. Sounds very close. Maybe I used more detune in the one I showed you. Let's compare it. Yeah, it seems about the same. A little bit less spread that we use on this one. But yeah, we got a pretty close result. So let's go back to the original bass and let's delete this one. All right, let's hop over to the next instrument, which is, let's see, we got the hypersaws. So let's turn off the effects that I have on them. So these are 2 hypersaws, one that's playing really high up. and then one that's playing low. And these are very easy for me to recreate. Let's go back to the default patch. In this case, I actually use a preset to start. So if I go to analog stereo poly H, it sounds like this. And the cool thing about this is that it's using both panels, right? We can hear one on the left. And then one on the right. So what I want to do is either layer them like this with the lower and the upper half, or what I like to do is have them all play a whole one. So just, just using one, either the lower half or the upper half. But what I actually did was I ended up doubling this up with another set of superstyles that I have over here. That playback over here. And this is like the main superstyle that's not too detuned. What I wanted to do with these other ones is to really go and detune them. So what I ended up doing was I used the high and the low one. But in dual mode. And then I went ahead and I made the decays and the sustain short. Got rid of the delays as well. I'm gonna add a bit more sustain. A bit quiet. And then when I pair it up with the high and one, which has a similar character in the ADSR, what I did was I just detuned this more. So you see this, I have more voices, I have the tune that's quite high, I spread them all the way. Where this one's detuned a little bit less. So then I add them together. And I start to add processing to them. I start off within a filter Saturn. To add a little bit of greediness, also some saturation at the low end that I really like. Notice how that adds a lot of depth. And the next thing I'm doing is a little bit of EQ. Getting rid of some of the high end and then dynamically reducing the low frequencies right here, the low mids. And you see, even though I am reducing some of the low frequencies after, the Saturn still has quite a bit of effect on the sound. If we take both of them off, we get a supercell that's more in your face, that doesn't have much depth. But when we turn these plugins on, we create depth, and then we're also making it seem like it's farther because we're reducing the high frequencies. So now we have this supersizer standing behind the main supersizer that I played earlier. So this works really well. On top of this, I'm using a manipulator to add some stereo widening. Which, strangely enough, does not really destroy your mono signal. It's really, really great. For example, let's try this out. Oh, by the way, I'm also changing the left and right signal here. So if we set this to bypass, let's turn this back on. I changed the positioning of the high and the low parts because now I wanted to pair up with the supersize over here. And if they were all playing the same thing, they'd be really unbalanced in the stereo image. So essentially what I'm doing by using these layers that are playing the same notes, same frequencies, but are using different effects and being processed a bit differently, is creating depth. So we have this layer that's panned to the left or panned to the right, and then we have another layer that's panned to the left that's a bit different. So this creates some uniqueness, and then this also means that when they're in mono, they're still going to be compatible. So let's take a listen to them together. Notice how I'm losing a lot of the, essentially what we perceive as level when we turn off the stereo shaper, because they're playing the same area, they're playing the same frequency range, so they're colliding. Now when we play them all together with the main little lead that we have, they sound nice, fat, and cohesive. The main lead right here, I believe it's this one. Now it's very, very resonant, very, very distorted, and that's why it's the lowest one out of all the leads in the mix. If it was louder, it'd be pretty annoying. So what I did with this lead, it's quite simple. I'm not using unison, actually. I'm using that trick I showed you earlier, where I'm grabbing the VCO2, setting it to noise, and setting it to low frequency, and have that affect VCO1. But a tiny little bit. You see that? A tiny smidge. So with just 0.15 affecting the cross mod on the VCO1, we get this really screechy and distorted sound. I really like it. We can change this to a different waveform, but it's not going to sound the same. Doesn't have the same sound. So by using the noise, we can kind of emulate like we'd have a more a faster LFO modulating the cross mod on the VCO1. And the moment we go past 15, it sounds absolutely brutal. So we gotta, control that, keep it nice and tight around 15. Now we can control certain things here, like the normal. We want this to be even faster. And now we have more detail than we had before. So this is a cool trick. If you're going to be using the noise waveform, you can set this to normal and be a bit more detailed with how much cross modulation you want to apply. Again, let's go back to normal. That's what I would use in this section. The filter, I do have it pretty low. Let's open it up though. I say I had it pretty low. I have it, low because of the envelope modulation. And the envelope modulation is based on envelope 2, so it's this one. So we have a little plucky hit and then it's sustained. So even without having to resort to distortion, we get a pretty distorted sound out of the box. Let's turn off the processing on this. And we pretty much have the exact same sound. We're just shaping the tone a little bit with these other plugins. Again, let's drop this in level. We have first a gatekeeper to create a sidechain. Though it should probably be the last one on the chain, or yeah, I think it might be turned off. Anyhow, there's a Saturn 2 as well. Using a warm tube, and then I'm reducing, or not reducing, I'm boosting some of the mid-range to make that more present. And then as when you compare it to the high end, which is pretty much unchanged. And then we have the gatekeeper and the Pro Q3 to boost the mid-range, but not the high end. The high end's dipped again a little bit because it is quite abrasive. We could even go ahead and get away with doing something like this because the high frequencies are also filled up by the super saws that are high ones. See? So we don't necessarily have to be filling up all the frequency spectrum with this main lead. We can just have it provided the main character for the rest of the supersaws. See how it fits perfectly in the mix? It's fantastic. So that's the leads that I created with the TAL-J-8. There's a little piano preset at the beginning. It's like an organ type of thing. And of course the primary supersaw that's playing the pluck. And I'm not going to get into that one because we pretty much cover them with the background supersaws. But here with the keyboards, we're just using a preset from the drawbar organ and another one called Stardust. The organ's playing the low notes, and then the Stardust preset is playing the higher frequencies. It's a pretty melancholic sound. Just using pretty much the raw preset. I think I might have used, let's see. I don't think I'm gonna change anything at all. Actually, let's see. Stardust. I don't think I changed much. Maybe just reduce some of the releases and whatnot. Made it a little bit less wet. But there we go. That's that preset. And then there's this one. And that's this really nice warm organ. Again, I'm not doing much this. Yeah, again, I didn't change much. If I go to the master fader, nothing really. So they sound pretty good on their own. Just make sure you place them properly in the mix. Maybe now what I would do is add a little bit of reverb to them. I think that's pretty much all I would change. But there you go. We covered the TAL-J-8 in detail. We examined presets that I made myself, and also presets that are come included with the J8. Again, download the demo, give it a shot. It's a very nice synthesizer. There's a couple videos out there of the TAL Uno LX compared to the real analog synth that it's emulating, and it's very, very close. It's super close. Focus on writing good music when you're using these instruments. If you're trying to get away with doing like crazy dubstep bass, of course you're not gonna get that out of it. But if you're creating some nice chords, some nice pads, a nice lead melody, you can really make it shine with these instruments. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you want to make sure you don't miss out any of our content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Once again, I'm Kevin Ochoa with Music Marketing TV, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.